Okay, so we are live. Let me just make this bigger. Um, I usually can make this bigger. I'm not sure why. Let me just go on my page and make sure that we are live.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we are live. All righty. So thank you so much, Garnett, for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem.
This is something that I have been doing. You're my fourth interview.
Ooh, exciting. I
So,
like
yeah,
that.
since November, you are my fourth interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to again thank you. I appreciate every parent that comes on and is willing to share the results of their parenting profile quiz and have these discussions with me about their children and how you interact with them and respond to their big emotions. So, because
Mm-hmm.
if you've had any time to read some of the profiles, basically most people, um, their default reactions are based upon those profiles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the goal is to cause you to be more reflective. So we're going to talk about those default reactions and those default profiles, but we're also going to talk about ways that you engage in more reflective parenting, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
It does. That makes sense. I'm excited.
Okay. Do you have any questions before we begin?
Um, I don't think I have any immediate questions, but I would say that I'm excited to be your fourth guest because this particular topic of emotional safety to me is really been a key part of in my parenting experience of really creating a parenting style. So this particular topic means a lot to me personally. So I'm excited to be
Great.
here kind of talking a little bit more around that.
I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you.
Hmm.
Great. And I'm interested in finding out like how all of that comes together.
Yeah.
All righty.
So,
So, oh, go ahead.
oh yeah, no, I'm ready for my first question.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna say something else. Um, so you work from home, Garnett,
I do.
in IT. So
Hmm.
can you tell us a little bit about your work and how you actually balance that, your work and parenting?
Yes. So I actually work inside of an IT project management office, and I'm an analyst. And a lot of what I do is working, kind of finding the way businesses do various things and kind of translating them into typically new technology.
Oh,
So
wow.
there is a lot of everything from different kinds of personalities, kind of dealing with, pressure of timelines, training, change management. So there's a lot that I do in my professional life that is a lot about building relationships and really
Right.
being able to kind of manage people. So
Mm,
I would definitely say that I use some of the same tactics that I've learned kind of educating myself on parenting. I've had to think about some of that in
right.
my professional life and use some of those same tactics for sure.
Wow. And and how does that, so with all of that you're doing, how does that translate into you and the work that and not just the work, I would say we as parents we work, but the
Oh
work
yeah,
that you do as a parent. Does it
yeah.
ever does it ever impact you and affect how you parent?
Oh yes, yes. And I think this year in particular, I know that a lot of people who work in corporate America this year, things have kind of been all over the place. And I think particularly with people in my age group, we're all kind of feeling it. So whether it be, layoffs at your company or, things are changing or new leadership, whatever the case may be, I think a lot of that stress, especially when you work from home, in our instance, we have two parents
Right.
that work from home. So it is something that sometimes the day can follow you into your regular life. And I think that that's
Right.
something that we've really had to balance and think about. So I think when I think about, that kind of like, wait, think, speak. That's what I have to do sometimes when I
Right.
come, hot out of the office. So yeah.
Wow. And
Yep.
and so you do find yourself being more of a person that takes a pause or a break before you say something or react to
Yeah.
something.
Yes.
Wow.
I would say that that's come with a long kind of journey for me to kind of understand myself. I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD in something called
Okay.
dyscalculia, which means I struggle with the way math computes. So for me, when I have to be very self aware, I feel like all the time. And I think with interactions
So
with
can you
people, I
say
really,
that
oh,
second part again? We missed that.
okay, sorry. Where did I leave off?
Oh,
Oh, oh,
hello?
can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Here I am.
I
Sorry
can
about
hear
that.
you.
Technical difficulties.
That's okay.
Um, so where were we?
I was saying, can you tell me the second part? Like, I know you talked about the ADHD,
Oh
but there
yeah.
was a secondary, is
Yeah,
it a diagnosis?
it is. And I was fortunate enough to know by the age of 19. And I think for me, that knowing myself and having that self-awareness, I really have to pause. And that's really for my own sanity as a parent. And as a human being, because sometimes we forget parents are humans too.
Mhm.
Um,
Right,
but that's something I am very conscious of in trying not to be as reactive. So I think that that's something that over time, and especially as my kids get older,
right,
that becomes easier versus when you have, like a toddler kind of pulling at your leg or, whatever the case may be. So that's something I think I've earned
right.
over time.
Absolutely. Um, and so when you think about your parenting journey, what are some moments that have stretched or surprised you the most? For example, maybe a phase your child went through, a moment you didn't expect to be so emotional, or something that shifted your perspective.
Hmm. That's a tough one to answer. And the reason why I say that is I remember people that I knew that had kids before I did, and everybody
Yes.
talks about the phases that babies go through. And
Yep.
I think one of the things parents don't talk about enough is that never ends. So it's kind of like just as soon as you think you have something figured out, whether it
Yes.
be, with a kid's school or, with a group of friends or, a particular sport, interest, or hobby. And then all of a sudden, now it's a problem, or now it's not something that we love anymore, or whatever the case may be. I think for me, that's been
Right.
something that it's typically not the obvious things that have surprised me over time. I think those are the things that kind of sneak up on you that you're like, oh yeah, that's not going to work anymore. Now we need to readdress it. So I think for me
Right.
overall, being kind of like that, you know, having like an agile mindset to constantly be like, okay, all right, we're good. We don't have to, freak out. This is what we're going to do instead.
Right. Right. So would you say that it causes you, whatever that situation or experience may be in the moment, it causes you to be flexible?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where sometimes I would say that one of the things that I can tend to do is kind of have a big emotion myself. You could talk to me the
Mm.
next day and I would be like, oh no, that's fine now. So it's kind of like that's just kind of in my nature. And that, I've always kind of felt was just part of my personality. And I think as a parent, I also need to make sure that, when I have big emotions myself about something.
Right.
Just being real with my kids to say, like, hey, I really overreacted there. And I want you to know that, I understand what
Right.
I could hear you. I understand you. And, again, that parents make mistakes too.
That's awesome because I think that our kids, our children, I think
Mhm.
they look for that. Like, okay, so maybe mom did make a mistake, and for us to go back and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and I apologize for that.
Mhm.
I think it's huge because kids need to see us making mistakes, and that it's
Absolutely.
okay to make that mistake and then go back and apologize for it.
Hmm. Hmm. Totally agree.
I think that's great that you take the time to be. I think it's intentional, right?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
one of the things, I have twins that are 13. And
Hmm.
as we kind of navigate the teen, um, this new season of parenting,
Right.
one of the things that I think I've noticed, I've had a lot of experience with teenagers over the years. I've been a long time coach. So I've spent a lot of time when I was younger, long before I was a parent, with teenagers. And
Wow.
I think there's so many things I think back to, and I'm like, wow, my perspective on, this same situation I saw another kid go through, say,
Right.
15, 20 years ago, so different now that it's my own children or whatever the case may be. But, kind of thinking about that concept of apologizing and, we're talking about emotional safety. I think one of the big
Right.
ones with this age group is really trying to remove any kind of shame and
Right.
really kind of saying like, people make mistakes and, sometimes things
Exactly.
don't go as planned. And I think
Right.
the younger you can get your kids kind of to accept that and kind of know that, they can come to their parents and they can talk to you. I really truly do believe that the younger you can get them to understand that, that will be their innate reaction when something does go sideways and they're, a teenager and now they need someone to talk to. You've already gone through all that and you've already set the foundation that there's no judgment here. So
Absolutely.
I've worked really hard on that with my kids in the last few years because I know what's coming.
Right. And it becomes even more challenging as they get older because they don't like to share.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
basically, nurturing that in them as a young child
Mhm.
is going to be so helpful for them when they get older. Again, making it safe and okay to share your emotions.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I would also say that if you have a neurodivergent child and their emotions don't always line up with what is the typical reaction that a child would give,
Right.
I just saw an amazing reminder to parents and family members that have neurodivergent kids in their families, and it was
Yep.
talking about don't be insulted if a neurodivergent child opens a gift and they're just kind of like, oh yeah, thanks. And they're not making eye contact. They're not making a
Right.
big to-do. This could have been the exact thing that the kid asked for. But
Right.
that it's not about the person who gave it. It's not about their reaction to the gift.
Exactly.
That's, something that I think I've also seen where, you try to talk to your kids, say, well, geez, why are you doing that? And kind of like questioning them. And the more you get to learn about your kids, I feel like
Mhm.
that will help also kind of say, well, that's not shameful. I mean, no, you said that's what you wanted. That's great. So and so got it for you. And just kind of
Right.
make it so they don't feel like they're constantly being judged, regardless of the emotion and the way that that kind of comes out.
Exactly. And if you all are just joining us, I am speaking with Mrs. Garnett Sherry.
Mhm.
And our topic or our theme for today is called or entitled Emotional Safety, Feeling Understood, Accepted, and Supported. And how can we as parents open the space for our children to feel emotionally safe? So that's what we're talking about today. And so here is the third question.
Mhm.
Every parent has patterns that tend to show up in stressful moments, those automatic ways we react when emotions run high. What's one pattern you've noticed in yourself Some parents notice they jump in to fix things, raise their voice, withdraw, or try to keep the peace. What's something that you notice that's a pattern in the way that you react or respond to your child?
So I would say that when I hear that question out loud, I often think about maybe what kind of parent I was when I had toddlers versus the parent that I am now.
Yes.
Um, I would say that for me, kind of understanding the different kind of parenting styles. Can I give the big reveal of what my parenting style is?
Well, I was going to get to that, but yes, but let's get to that. I was going to ask you after this question, kind of
Okay,
setting the
okay.
stage to kind of introduce the patterns. But so, Mrs. Garnett Sherry, you took the parenting quiz, you took the parenting profile quiz,
Yep.
and you answered 20 questions.
Mhm.
Each question was aligned with a specific profile.
Mhm.
And you had to, after taking that quiz, you had to tally the results. What was your most dominant profile? What trait do you possess?
So I was the curious learner,
Okay.
which was interesting. My That's the one that I answered the most frequently.
Yes.
I had a secondary one, which was the sensitive supporter, which
Okay.
I thought off the top of my head, if I looked at these and read them, it's interesting because once I went through all the questions and kind of understood more, I would definitely say that I am in my curious learner era, if you will, as a parent. And
Mm-hmm.
the more I kind of thought about that, it does make sense because I don't feel like it's kind of one of those things where this particular kind of parenting, I think, really does show you don't have to be an expert on your child. You need to be a student of your child. And that's something I think in
Right.
particular with my kids, I've really tried to really understand their perspective. And just maybe
Right.
it's got to do with the fact that I'm an analyst for a living, but
It
um,
could be.
it could be. It could be. I've always been someone that has always genuinely loved feedback. And feedback is something that can like navigate you away from bad things, kind of draw you to where, the good things are or whatever the case may be. So I think I'm constantly talking to the kids and questioning them. So
Okay.
that doesn't surprise me that I would fall into that curious learner pattern. And I
Mm-hmm.
would say it's curiosity instead of correction is
Exactly.
really where we're at.
Well,
Because I can tell you that again, this is a much more mature parent speaking to you with older kids now and knowing what I know. But a lot of how we got to this place is by constantly reading, researching, and really understanding my kids. And
right.
I happen to have boy girl twins. So that's a whole nother level of two very different kids, different genders, different
Right.
experiences, and how to navigate that. So I kind of feel thankful that
Mm,
that's the kind of parent I am because, twins are definitely a unique experience, which I personally, as a mom, have always been incredibly grateful for. So
right.
I'm glad that I can really kind of um, be in a place where I can get to know both my kids in different ways.
Wow. I think that's great. And your secondary profile is sensitive supporter. Is that correct?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing is that, and I'll let you speak after this, but the interesting thing is that most people, most parents, um, when we think about profiles, um, will ultimately shift. So they're
Hmm.
not constant. They
Hmm.
can change based on our own experiences, our own emotions,
Hmm.
um, or a specific situation. They're not static. They will change.
Hmm.
And sometimes, and I've been noticing that individuals that I have interviewed have some of them start off as rule keepers because little
Mhm.
ones need to know what
Mhm.
the rules are. And then they
Mhm.
eventually shift into a different profile as their child gets older.
Mhm.
So these profiles can change
And
depending on
I'm glad to hear you say that because
yeah,
I can definitely see that, if I had taken this at a different time, I could see myself falling into more of the problem solver category,
yeah, yeah,
even when my kids are younger.
yeah,
In my mind, I think that's really an exhaustive state as a parent,
yeah.
because it's tiring to
It's
constantly,
immediate.
be
It's
doing
immediate.
everything for the kids. And
Right,
as they get older, um, again, maybe it's more age appropriate when they're younger. But I
right.
think, especially if you have kids with any kind of, something that you want to make sure that they're developing as they should, and it's age appropriate and all those things. I could say that I'm almost like, again, thankful that I've kind of gotten to this point where I feel like I can be a more informed parent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that your experience with this whole quiz and the interview is helping you also
Mhm.
become a little more informed. Um,
Mhm.
so again, curious learner is someone that is always asking questions, seeking out resources, and trying to parent with intention. And a sensitive supporter is someone who senses what their child feels. They basically feel their child's emotions before they even say anything.
Mhm.
So you basically you respond with emotion to your
Mhm.
child.
Mhm.
So,
And
in certain situations.
yes, I agree with that completely. And I also would say that at first I could see that the curious learner was, and this was secondary, but there was a pretty big gap between what, the tally for one and then the other.
Yeah,
And I would definitely say the sensitive supporter is something that I've worked really hard, not to kind of fall into, because I do feel like that can be a trap. And for those who maybe have experienced it, we all love our kids and we all
right.
want, what's best for them. But I had very good parenting advice, over the years. And I think one of the things that always stuck with me is, my aunt has twins.
Oh,
And
wow.
she'll probably kill me for saying this, but she told me once before, she's a mom of three, and she said, never immediately think it's not your kid. And I
Yeah,
thought that that was such a good piece of advice, that it was like, never say never. Because if
right,
you're constantly, and that's not to say like, oh my gosh, my kid did this, it must be wrong, or there could be this, or there could be that. It's not about, that's not what it's about. I think what she's really saying, and even I saw her parent this way as well, is really understand that, like, you need to hear all the facts, adults, kids, everybody. And I think as your kids get older, being a sensitive supporter, it can be very easy to immediately just defend your kid
right,
without the facts.
right,
And that, and I can tell you, even from coaching over many years, I saw many parents do that. And in some instances, it really was a disservice,
it really,
to the athlete or student, because really, they're, how come this, how come that, they're trying to get in there, and it's like they're almost taking it more personally than the student or athlete. And I think a lot of parents, feel that same way.
right, absolutely. I mean, I think it definitely and it can be embarrassing for the child.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I noticed one of the questions that I
Mhm.
did respond as, problem solver still, was
Yeah,
the question about embarrassment.
right,
And I would say that, as someone who had a child that, say, struggled with things that were, the birthday parties where everybody's running around, kids, loud, no overstimulation, kids everywhere, jumping, running. When you have two of them, and one, right, might really kind of be charged up and the other one is just kind of more, run of the mill, it can be a real
Right.
challenge to manage that. And I think for me,
Mm,
as my kids get older, there's certain things where I still will step in because it's more about the embarrassment. I wouldn't want somebody else, once your kids get to a certain age, other kids notice. And that's where,
right.
it didn't really surprise me that I would step in and be like, oh, okay, well, let's do this and redirect. So nobody feels like they're, embarrassed, because that's
Right.
that whole element that everything's embarrassing once you hit
Right.
that tween stage.
Right. I mean, even if we step in, like sometimes
Absolutely.
when we step in, the
Mhm.
child is embarrassed because we have to come in as mama
Oh,
and try to,
absolutely.
help with maybe some challenge that they're experiencing. So
Hmm.
that can be
Hmm.
embarrassing as well. So
Oh, yeah. Yes. And I think that even just as a parent, to not try to jump in the moment, I really try to kind of wait until the right opportunity to be like, hey, when this happened, just so you know, some people might think, X, Y, and Z because of this thing that you said or did. You might want to think about that differently because you don't want to insult someone. But again, not
right.
making it feel like it's oh my God, this person's going to be so upset with you. It's just more of like a learning.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And so then here's the next question. How do you usually recognize when you're starting to move from calm to overwhelmed? Excuse me.
Mm,
And what helps you pause in that moment? So now we're talking about those moments where we're taking pauses. And we
mhm.
mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes it's noticing your heart racing, feeling tense, or realizing you're talking faster.
Mm. One of my coworkers several years ago said to me once, I'm on video calls a lot, and jokingly, she said to me, Garnett, are your kids afraid of you? I laughed, only because I I think when I get passionate about something in general, and that was the instance. We were talking about something at work, and I was really excited about something, and that's something I think that when my kids were younger was a lot harder for me because
Yeah.
I was definitely the type who would raise my voice a lot. And I definitely feel like that pause as my kids matured, I matured as a parent, which I absolutely think that's a thing. The more that I was able to kind of pause, I could see that the outcome was so much more in kind of like swinging more towards the way that I wanted it to. So the more I started to see success with really kind of like taking my first step to take a deep breath and, not over, hyper focus on something because I can do that. Um, I know that I have very high rejection sensitivity where I feel like, sometimes I'll walk away, and I'm sure even when this interview is over, I will be like, oh my God, I should have said this. I shouldn't have said that. But I
You're
want my,
doing well. You're doing well.
oh, good. Thank you. But I think that that's something that I've really tried to be in the moment with my kids and not
Right.
let all of the other stuff, because it's not really about what your kid just did. It was the 93 other things that led up to it. Maybe it was your kid,
Exactly.
maybe it was work, maybe it was, all of those things. And that's definitely something that I really could see, particularly
Right.
with my son,
Right.
who is definitely really needs that reflective moment, or I'm going to get big emotions out of him, and then now we're not going to get to the outcome that we had wanted.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
so and when you start to experience those big emotions from him, is that the moment where you can kind of pause, do you think?
I would say, again, when they're younger, I do think it's harder because now the way that they can act, maybe,
Yeah.
a kid is running out the door or running towards the road, or, those are things that put you in that fight or flight. I think now, as soon as I start to see that when that sensitive, supporter spidey sense kicks in and I'm like, okay, here we go. All right. Like I immediately start to almost kind of like calm myself and just be, here it comes. All right, here we go. And kind of feeling like I'm ramping myself up to address this. And I think that I've gotten pretty good at that right now. But I think, again, it's the age. Like I do think right now,
Right.
My kids are in 7th grade. They happen to be in a new school this year. So there was things that, transitions, all the things. We're feeling really good. Let's have this meeting in about a year and then we'll see what's changed. You never know, So it's kind of one of those things where when things are good, be in the moment and enjoy it. And then when you have to kind of, go there, if you will, I just really try to think about, hey, remember when this happened and you thought, the worst, but instead it worked out this way. So I would, no matter what kinds of kids' personalities you have, I think really thinking about positive intent is so important because it can seem like they're just flying off the handle at you. And it can easily, anger is the easiest emotion. You're just going to get mad and you're going to yell and you're going to scream. And then most of us feel horrible about that. So easy to do.
Right. I mean, and I think it's amazing that you said that they've been through a transition this year. Is it a school transition? And you said it went well.
It did. And I think that from it's a tough age for social interactions. And we were very lucky that we have a really supportive environment. And I am also someone who is always going to be curious as to what my kids are doing when they're not with me and kind of understanding what their experiences are about. And then that way, if something does come up, I can address it appropriately because I have context. So I know that, right now we're feeling really good about where we are. I would definitely say in our case, it's, it takes a village. So you got to know all your villagers.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
So the next question would be, has there been a recent moment when you noticed yourself responding differently, maybe with more awareness or patience? And we might have covered this. For example, you paused before reacting, took a breath, or chose to listen instead of correct. So what is your default pause? I guess I would say. What do you do that you rely on the most that helps you pause?
I think that going to a quiet place. And even if we're, maybe out in public or, we're with a family gathering, whatever those things are, I think removing myself and the children or child that I'm talking to. And that really does kind of give them the space to say what they need to say and for you to say what you need to say without, prying eyes or anybody questioning, oh, what's going on? And really being able to kind of address it. And then with the hopes of moving on. So it doesn't, completely take over your evening or, whatever the case may be. Right.
I like that too. And I think, I know in my work with children, I find that I'm also saying to them, right? Like if things become elevated, if your emotions become big or you're struggling to express your emotions due to significant dysregulation, the best thing to do is to remove yourself from that situation. Give yourself a pause so that you can get calmer.
Yes.
And then go back and have that conversation because you definitely need to go back and resolve the issue.
Yep. And I would say that that's something that I had to work hard at because I think innately kind of like, wondering, okay, what's next? And that's where I think sometimes I would kind of pull that trigger to maybe not take the space or not take a moment or not gather my thoughts. And I could see again that the outcome was not what I wanted. But as soon as I could see myself being consistent and seeing how positive it was for my kids, that really was a huge shift in my parenting. And I would say that probably happened around them being 8 or 9 is when I really feel like I went from kind of that sensitive supporter, problem
Right.
solver, to really the opposite way of working hard to get to that curious learner side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because at that point you need to know more.
Oh,
You know,
that's a very
I
good
feel
point.
like,
Hmm.
and I don't know if you notice this, but I feel like younger children, even though they have to learn what emotions are in order
Hmm.
to share them, I feel like there are certain types of behaviors and in interactions that you experience with them that help you, that's predictable almost,
Absolutely.
you
Yep.
know? And
And
so
that
you don't
that's
need
a
to be
great point.
curious.
Such a great point. And
Hmm.
I think when it comes to their emotions in general, if you're dealing with a kid who has big emotions, and really getting them to a point where they can start recognizing it and kind
Yes.
of being like, okay, all right, like oh, yep, this is like I got to take a beat. I mean, that's what we're all hoping for, is
Yeah.
that they can learn how to understand themselves, be self-aware, and know,
Right.
when do I need to take a breath? And, and I'm hoping that as parents, we're doing that by modeling it.
Absolutely. And because I think that they learn best from what we model,
Absolutely. Yes,
you
absolutely.
know. And
Absolutely.
I also feel like, because you mentioned around 8 is when you made that shift to becoming more of a
Mhm.
curious learner, I'm willing to bet that it had to also do with your children being very developmentally appropriate and ready to start learning about their emotions and knowing more
Mhm.
about what's causing the meltdowns or whatever it is that might be triggering those big emotions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think in you in the school systems in America, so much is kind of, there's been so much more focus around socio-emotional learning. And I think that's great.
Yes.
What I think gets lost around third or fourth grade, the expectations get higher. And
Yeah.
if you have a neurodivergent child that is going to need that support, and some of those things that, the visual cues, the constant, okay, we're going to do this and then we're going to do that.
Right. The
You
check-in.
will, that goes away for a
Hmm.
lot of classrooms, that are in that third and fourth grade and up. And I think
Right.
that really being able to understand and your child, and keeping that curious approach, and really knowing what is really going to work for them educationally,
Yes.
that's important for people to really understand. And I think that that's really where my kind of shift was too, is knowing, okay, I need to know what's going on with my kid, or I can't
Right.
advocate for them
Right.
with, because I'm not going to be there all the time.
Yeah. Advocacy was necessary for you.
Oh, yes, very important.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I having twins, there had been an instance in both of their lives that it was really necessary for me to, jump in and advocate, whether it be medically or, at school or whatever the case may be. And those are by far some of the biggest challenges I know that,
Yeah.
we've faced as parents. And I think it's important to, sooner or later, the kids have to advocate for themselves. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at, as my
Right.
kids kind of get closer and closer to high school. Sooner or later, it's not going to be mom or dad kind of stepping in to say, okay, yep, this is what's going on, and we just want you to be aware. This is this, and that's that. We want them to be comfortable enough, and be able to come forward and say, hey, this is what's going on with me. Can I do this or that to, rectify a situation, or, help a grade, or whatever that case may be. But
Right.
advocacy, I think, in this world is so important. So teaching our kids that is huge.
Right. Right. And again, we're the models, right?
We're the models. That's right.
And so the next question is, what helps you and your child reconnect after a hard moment? Some parents say it's a hug, a calm talk after emotions settle, or doing something simple together like reading or walking.
Yeah. I think that walking is a great one. Move a muscle, change a thought, kind of,
Yeah.
being able to, or go do something that, I often will go to, and I know that some people might struggle to understand this, but I think that doing something that you know that they would love, like, my kids are right now obsessed with making all these crazy hot chocolate concoctions. And hey, you know what? Let's go make a hot chocolate. You want to try to put crushed up Oreos in it this time, or whatever
Oh,
that may
wow.
be. That's the kind of stuff that I think is important, because it does. I tell my kids this, but I want them to see it in my actions of saying that I'm always going to be here for you. There's nothing you're going to do that is going to make me, love you less. And kind of, especially with kids that are neurodivergent, that are going to, may have that rejection sensitivity. I'm constantly, reminding my kids that, we're here for you, and, we care about you and we love you. So I think that's typically what I like to do, is kind of show it more in action, while
Yeah.
also saying,
Yeah. And you talked about in your on your form, you talked about a situation where reading the room could be difficult for your son.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and so watching or hearing about his interactions at school with teachers and students often result in miscommunication or misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
what thoughts can't come up when you're experiencing something like this with your child, and maybe that miscommunication?
Yeah. So we are a household that I feel like was built around my kids and our family and how we
Hmm.
operate. And I think that we encourage our kids to ask a lot of questions. They have opinions. And we've definitely been people who've been very upfront with our kids. We'd prefer them to talk to, more mature topics to us versus somebody else. And I think because of that,
Right.
particularly my son does feel that at times he is going to continue to ask questions, want to know why. And as you can imagine, once you get past that third, fourth grade, it's not so cute anymore when there's a kindergartner who says, well, why? Well, why? Well, now you have a fourth and fifth grader doing that. And it can be, I think the biggest miscommunication is that it's either aggressive, or that it is kind of something said with malice. Like,
Right.
well, how come you did that? And you can imagine when someone comes off with a question that doesn't necessarily match, like the room, which would be like something more along the lines, oh, excuse me, Mrs. So and so, but you did X, Y, and Z. You said you were going to do A, B, and C today. Can you just help me understand why? I mean, that would be great, but that's just not sometimes how it comes out. And I think particularly his curiosity, and he's
Right.
really had to balance that with adults in making sure that people did not feel that he was questioning their authority. But that is how his brain works, is by, asking questions and kind of
Right.
seeking to understand. And he's got to balance that,
Yeah.
because that is, I can imagine at a job, I'm well aware that there's many things I would like to know why things are a certain way, but you're not always going to know. So I think that that's something,
Yeah.
as he's gotten older, is getting better. But
Right.
that can be the same with kids too. And making a comment, boys and girls and all the things, as we start to get to those pre-teen and preteen years, just being
Right.
conscious. Because he's, a lot of times when he does say things, it's not at all, in the sense that people may take it. And he's got to learn how to express himself in a
Right.
way that is aligned with what his intention is. So we're
Exactly.
working on that, and he's getting a lot better.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, because you've written in here helping your son understand what he said or how he acted versus how it was received is your
Mhm.
goal when situations like that come up.
Absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times, if you take the time to consistently, have that moment of reflection, it is something
Mm,
that you will hear again, where I've heard him say like, hey, remember the time this or that happened? You were so right. I didn't say that this time. And guess what? The outcome that he wanted happened. So
Wow.
those are definitely the moments where I think it's like my proudest parenting moments is when I can see that he
Yes.
sees that, he's growing and evolving and using the tools in his toolbox.
And Garnett, you use the word consistency because I think consistency is very important, especially for children who may be a little inflexible in the way that they're thinking or who may be young and they
Mhm.
need consistent repetition of things so that they can internalize them and
Yep.
use them and be more, I would say, interact more positively with other people.
Yep.
You
I
know,
agree. And
uh,
I think it also goes worth saying that when it comes to interacting with people, I'll say something that's interesting about my son is if he's experienced teachers that can tend to be, very stern in some instances, he actually does really
yes.
well with those teachers because there's there's no question of what they're trying to tell him. They're
Hmm.
not happy with the way you're doing something, so you're going to stop. There's if there's teachers who try to use like sarcasm and different things to interact, that just goes flying straight over his head. He just can't
Yeah.
read that. And
Yeah.
those are some of the things that he's starting to learn to say like, oh wow, this particular teacher, that's a sense of humor, but he didn't know
Mhm.
that initially.
Right.
So
He's learning that.
he's learning that, right? And for some kids it's gonna, you know comparison is the thief of joy for sure when it comes
Mm,
to kids. So if
right.
other people's kids catch something, then you know
Yeah. But and I'm glad that you're able to have those conversations with your son and cause him to become a little more insightful into his own behaviors and actions and how they may impact other people. I think that's amazing.
Mhm.
And looking back and using the lens of this month's theme, what might you do differently next time, if anything at all?
Hmm.
And you talked a little bit about giving your son the ability to feel comfortable in
Mm.
sharing his feeling.
Mhm.
Um, you know,
I
would
would
you?
say, I'm trying to think. I would say this. I have really worked hard at really helping my son kind of work through his emotions. And I think a lot of boy moms in general,
Mhm.
that's really something I hope that a lot of boy moms hear. And I
Yeah.
think that my particular generation has started to kind of recognize that you really have to teach that to your sons and that,
Yes.
what's, this is appropriate, this is not. I mean, there's so many other aspects to that about how
Mm,
that plays into emotion. So I think that it's not so much that I would do that differently, but that is something that I am really constantly reminding myself of the older he gets.
yeah.
So in regardless of the age that they're at, I think it's important for everybody to remind, boys, girls, no matter what, that
Yes.
that your emotions are valid and it's okay to feel them.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
that's truly what a lot of this is about because most of the time, especially our teenagers, they feel like they're not being understood. We
Correct.
go, I'll just say we go in and we want to solve a problem immediately.
Mhm.
And the child they're not open to that in the moment.
Mhm.
They want to experience the emotion
Mhm.
and what's driving that emotion and
Yep.
then come back to a solution.
Mhm.
They want to be heard and they want us to understand the reason behind why they may be feeling a specific emotion. So,
Yep.
and that's where that reflection comes in,
Yep. Yep.
you
And
know.
I think it's also interesting in family dynamics because,
Mm,
I'm not with my kids all the time and we have, a big family on, different parts that are far away, that are close. And I think that particularly when your kids are younger, you also sometimes may need to kind of share with other people in the family, hey, this is, how we deal with this, or,
Right.
this is the way that we prefer to do this. I would say, kind of going back to your question about something I might have done differently, that's probably something I probably would
Yes.
have maybe done a little bit more when my kids were younger, as far as, really kind of
Hmm.
giving that additional context to say, this is how we're dealing with this behavior. This is how we're dealing. Because when you were talking about
Right.
consistency, that is so key. So, that's
Right.
something that you learn very early on in parenting.
Right. And building on what you said, not just within your own family, but
Yeah.
through extended family members as well.
Yep.
Building that
School,
consistency,
everybody. Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Um, and so what is something that you've learned about yourself as a parent that you wish you'd known earlier? This might be patience, boundaries, or realizing you can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm. I definitely agree with you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Mm,
But
I do
I
too.
I would say that it's a good way to say this. I think in general, whether it be a diagnosis of some kind or whether it be, there's so many things that can happen with your kids, and I
Right.
think that just being able to make your kids feel like, in this, I know this sounds cliche, and there's so many people who feel like this is such an overdone kind of thing, but that it's okay to be you. You don't have to be different. You don't have to
Yes.
be, even and I feel like sometimes even kids need to be told you don't have to be exceptional. You don't have to be like, you just need to be you. Now,
Right.
you in 10 years, you in 5 years, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to worry about this
Right.
right now. Like, if you're struggling with something, let's talk about it. But I
Right.
think that there's so much pressure on kids today. I see that all the time with like tween and teenage. And I think that it's really important to really have that support at home and kind of have
Mhm.
those values, morals, and principles kind of somewhat discussed and understood
Yes.
before you're actually called upon to be like, ooh, what do I do in this situation? Well,
Right.
let's hope that you've talked about that and we're kind of preparing yourself, for that. So, whether that be reading a book or watching a certain TV show or kind
Right.
of giving an opportunity for your kids to ask questions about something.
Right.
I think all of that leads into, emotion because
Mhm.
if your kid immediately goes into, you know, fight, flight, or freeze, you don't want them to, have something happen to them that could have been avoided if they had been prepared. So,
Right.
kind of having that Girl Scout approach to keeping your kids always prepared, for whatever comes next. And I think mental health and emotion is just as important in those conversations.
It certainly is, and we battle with social media too. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Because if we're not
yeah.
having those conversations at home,
Yeah.
that our
Yep.
children pick it up from what's being shared on social media, and then there's the comparison, right? They compare themselves to what other people are experiencing, and it's really not accurate,
hmm
you
And
know.
I
So,
have, and I think that that is so important, Simone,
mhm.
especially in this new age of influencers,
Yes,
where, they're comparing themselves to, people who have that they don't understand that there is adults and brand deals and, budgets and all these things behind what these so-called kids, and I use that lightly because they're like a branding machine.
yeah.
And I think that there's so many kids out there, particularly girls, that are constantly making that comparison. So I think that just, kind of talking to your
Yes,
kids about those things is just going to kind of help them um, navigate that situation and know what's kind of real and what's
right.
not.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key, right? Helping
Mhm.
to helping them to understand what's real and what's not.
Oh yeah, especially
Definitely.
with AI, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Just
Yeah.
a couple more questions and then we're
Sure.
done.
Okay.
So, if another parent watching tonight feels stuck or overwhelmed, what would you do? I mean, excuse me, what would you tell them? What words or reminders have helped you get through tough moments? Or what do you tell yourself when things feel hard?
Mm. I would tell them you are not alone.
Mm,
And I think that, you know, we're we just kind of touched on social media, and I think that for a lot of, I'm a an elder millennial, and I think for a lot
yes.
of us,
Yes.
research in access to information has been a big part of our adult experience. And
Right.
there is some positive sides to social media, and I would even say, particularly TikTok. And the reason why I say that,
Really?
yes,
There's
there
there's there are different opinions about that though.
well, and I agree. I agree with you. There's, a lot of these people are not, professionals, and they're, diagnosing people, not that part where totally I get that. But I also think that there's a lot of people who are kind of showing the raw emotion of how hard parenting is. And I think if you're somebody who's really going through it and
Yes.
knowing that, my kid is, whether it be struggling in school or struggling with big emotions, or, even something more serious, when I've talked to parents who have successfully kind of managed or mitigated those experiences, you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So whether it be a professional or whether it be a support group, I don't really feel like parents were meant to do it alone. And that
No.
doesn't necessarily, that can mean family, that can mean friends. But even in the moment, and you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't think there's anybody who could understand. I do think that's where you will find a lot of quick, fast, very specific information. Um, you know, as part of that, just going on a TikTok, excuse me, and researching whatever that is, and you will find a lot of parents sharing their experiences. And
True.
that's how I feel like I learn, is by
True.
learning through other people's experiences, and what can I take away from that?
Right. And I guess what you're saying is while there are so many different channels, right? So many different platforms that you
Yes.
can access, it's what you take away from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the
Yeah.
huge underscore, is the takeaway is,
Yeah.
you really, you have to learn, just like anything in life, did you win or did you learn something? So it's kind of like, if you're,
Right.
it isn't always going to be the correct information, but I think a lot of times that can kind of help you start to think about, outside of your head, what else can I do? And there's
Right.
a lot of information out there that has been super helpful to parents.
Absolutely. And finally, what message or piece of advice would you share with another parent who shares your parenting profile?
I would say stay curious, my friends.
Of course.
um, I I think it's something that, again, I feel like you have to work at it.
Hmm.
And nobody's perfect. There's
No,
situations all the time where I'm like, wow, well, you probably could have taken a deep breath and dealt with that differently. But I think
exactly.
just knowing what's behind me here, and we are probably at your, like, Christmas holidays interview of the month, that I
Uh-huh.
think everybody gets stressed, and I
Yes.
just would say that, just try to let things go, and don't sweat the small stuff,
Right.
because there'll be bigger fish to fry, as they say. That if you constantly just get caught up in
Yeah.
all the things, that are going on, or that your kid's not wearing the right outfit, or they're not posing for the picture, or somebody's trying to hug them and the kid's running the other way, whatever those things are. I just think everybody, just going into the holiday season, needs to take a deep breath and just really say to yourself that, we're going to roll with it, and if whatever we need to do, kind of like that pep talk to say, like, we got this. So you can really try to show up, as your best self, even when it's hard. That's kind of
Without even
that's why
without even
parenting is hard.
without even doing the research then, right? Like, so what you're basically saying is you don't necessarily have to have all the answers
Yeah,
either.
right.
Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
I truly do believe, as someone who was not the type of person who was immediately like, wow, I'm going to do this as a mom or that as a mom. I was kind of afraid of babies, and then I had two of them.
Me
Um,
too.
right? So it is something that, that did cross my mind. When I was about to have twins, I was like, wow, what if I'm not good at this? But you have to trust
Yeah,
your instinct, and you really just need to,
exactly.
figure
Definitely.
it out, because that's what we're all trying to do.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the message that I would leave, and we've been on for an hour.
I know. I'm a talker,
So,
Simone. I can't help it.
yeah, you do well. Mm-hmm. I guess in closing, I would say parenting is a constant practice of reflection. What's one
Absolutely.
small intention you're carrying forward after today's conversation? Maybe being slower to react, offering yourself grace, or finding small daily moments to connect. But whatever that is, right? Just make sure that you are taking a moment to pause and be more reflective before you respond to your child. And again, when I say
Absolutely.
reflective, I encourage everyone to take into account the 3 C's that make up reflective parenting. It's compassion, connection, and calm.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
righty?
And you do whatever you need to do to make that happen. So
Absolutely.
wherever you are, just do your best and try to, even if there's not that quiet space or whatever it is. So,
Right. Right.
yep.
So, Garnett, thank you so much for joining me this
Yeah,
evening.
thank you.
Have a great holiday. We have 12 days off, so I am looking forward to it.
Yes, I do too. So definitely looking forward to the family time.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Simone.
Bye.